Yeah. Shake things up. I'm true to form. I made it done.
Huh?
Hey, John. Our new president was in town for a bit. Doing the transport of power.
She won't be able to really start until next year.
So we're going to start at least planning this semester.
Oh, she really?
Yeah, I don't know when. The idea is, that is,
Good for Andy.
I mean, if you look at it from
yeah, and there's Social Security issues come up if he doesn't do certain things.
Ready?
Time if he wants to.
Good for you.
Okay. Ready? Yeah.
Well,
I just have this
it's going to be a really...
Go ahead and call the USD 49 Board of Education
Yes.
meeting for Monday, November 13th to order. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda.
I can make a motion. We need to make a change to the agenda. We'll make a motion.
John, we want to remove A under old business.
A on old business.
Yeah. Or does it make any difference?
I just need to share with the board that the representative from Fort Hays State was wishing to be here, but because of a death in the family, won't be. Therefore, we were going to push that back again. I think we're ready. We have more information. There is a second draft. Actually, I think several people at Fort Hays had their eyes on it, went over it, but we're just not going to have the presentation tonight. Yeah.
Based on Tracy's email, don't need the full D.
I want to, well, they do, but I want to talk on that just a little bit. We'll leave that one.
So approve the agenda as presented?
Except you could probably pull 9A because there's nothing really to talk on with it.
So I'd make a motion to approve the agenda, but except for voting 9A.
Been moved by Board Member O'Borney.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member Fox. Any further discussions? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Next item on the agenda is audience participation. Baker?
Big audience tonight.
Seeing none, we'll move on to the next item, which is communications from other organizations. John, do we have anything else other than
Just
the
have-
Rec Commission? Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is school spotlights.
We do have a lot of spotlights, so I'll share that one that we knew of actually the last meeting, and I had forgotten to get it on the list, was the Early Childhood Connections. They received the Blue Ribbon Affiliate Reward for the parents as teachers, which really it's wonderful to end up getting any kind of recognitions, and in this case they were awarded because the program met or exceeded 17 essential requirements in the 16-17 year program. They also met at least 75% of the additional parents as teachers quality standards in the self-study. USD 489 Parents as Teachers program will be honored at the 2018 Parents as Teachers Conference, and so really congratulate all of them for the extra hard work that they've done with that. Unity Day was celebrated by Hayes Middle School, and they ended up having it was anti-bullying month as well. They had an assembly planned by the leadership team, and the students played mix-it-up bingo to start the day. They were placed into groups, and each student had a bingo card. They had to find a student who fit the description on the card. A person who has braces, a person who lives on a farm, a person who rides his or her bike to school. They had door prizes they were given to students entered the drawing who had completed their bingo cards. The leadership team created their own anti-bullying videos, and they were shown to the entire student body. Students and staff wearing orange met for a group picture. And the goal for the Unity Day and Mix It Up Day is to include others, to be open to new friendships and stand together against bullying. The middle school is united to kindness, acceptance, inclusion. Definitely proud of what they were able to accomplish. And I think the simplicity of it is just that. Sometimes we do sit with the same kids or same adults every day at lunch. We end up talking with the same ones at the beginning of the day. We don't meet new people very often because we get really stuck in the same. So that's wonderful. They had such a simple but very successful activity there. Well, actually, I can break this up. Mr. Moritz, would you come and speak on this one? The Hayes Middle School Efficiency Hall of Fame, please.
Okay, well, yeah, I wasn't here for that, but okay.
Oh, you're not? Okay. But you're definitely...
Is this anything? Where do you want me?
Well, actually, right here is great. I can have you speak on that as
Item
well.
5, are we on item 4 now?
Yeah, we're on the bridges, you know, but I know you're involved with that as well.
I am. I've got several students. This year, in the last 4 years, we've kind of modified our technology program a little bit, and one of the things that we're doing better is building bridges that hold more weight, and kids will build basswood bridges, about 30 grams worth of wood, and when they put that on a bridge tester, we calculate how much it weighs with how much it holds, and through that mathematic process, we have bridges that hold 1,000 times their weight occasionally. And these 4 kids exceeded 1,000 times their weight. That means their bridge, depending on how much they weigh, they'll hold anywhere from 75 to 125 pounds. And that's pretty impressive when you have a stick bridge that only spans a distance of about 14 inches. And so, and I've got more.
Carrillo and Trayton Roa. And then also Jacob Talaferro. Talifer and Blake Schmidt. Those were the two teams.
Since then, I've got 4 more kids that have joined the 1,000% efficiency wall of fame as well. So next month you'll get another.
Is it during your class?
What's
Is
that?
it during a class?
It is
The
during our
class project
exploratory
or-
tech class. Yes, during our exploratory tech class. During that class, we do robotics, we do bridge building, we do rocketry in space. Learn about NASA, we fly rockets, break bridges, build CO2 cars, super clips, and a whole variety of technology things. Very exploratory.
And every 7th grade takes that?
Every
for a
7th grade.
semester, right?
Yep, for 1 semester. Yes.
But you thought you were here because you also received a grant award we could talk about.
I did, as a
You
matter of
were
fact. This is
awarded a grant?
what I really had intended to do, is a couple different things. But since we're talking about robotics, I wanted to thank publicly Bob Muirhead and his team of grant and scholarship readers. I applied for one of their grants, and they sent me enough money to purchase 2 more robots for our robotics club for after school. They are about a $400 robot, and they sent us just under $800 to purchase 2 more of these robots. We do a robotic unit in our class time with the old NXT robots that we've cycled into that class, and they're still great robots. These ones are just the newest version of Lego robots. They hook up to our iPads that our students have. Very user-friendly. It's a graphic in nature, programming, linear, but it's all that coding that we've been learning in computer classes and stuff, and how to problem solve and sequence. And what they'll do with these is they'll add sensors, a variety of sensors, to have the robot operate in its environment autonomously and do all kinds of cool things. I've got 44 students in my robotics after school club.
After school.
44 kids, and so these 2 robots that Midwest Energy have purchased for us will go a long ways to doing the activities that I've got 44 kids doing.
How often do they meet then?
Right now, last year we only met 2 times a week, but with schedules and stuff, we meet for about 2 hours on Tuesdays.
2 hours and 2
Are they
Every
similar to the
Tuesday.
robots Marie Anderson wrote a grant for?
No.
Okay, I was
No,
going to say,
different
because it'd be
thing.
nice
Yeah,
to...
those ones she checks
With
out
44
for students.
kids, you have to have a lot of
Yes.
resources.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. No, that's what I really came down for, is to thank Midwest Energy and Bob Muirhead and their team that generously gave us 2 more robots for our
Very
program.
good. Well, thank you for sharing.
You betcha.
I'm sure glad you can talk to us about bridges and robots.
Yes, and our World Kindness Day today, it was nice that you showed up there, our leadership team. I mean, they are doing some phenomenal things at Hayes Middle School today. They did a Channel 21 broadcast. A couple of our students got on live and throughout the whole school and talked about World Kindness Day and initiated a new activity they're going to be doing for the next month with some tie bracelets. So it's good all around.
You need to get the robots to build the bridges.
To build a bridge. No, I tell my kids at the beginning of every robot unit, if I find out that they are trying to take over the world, they fail that unit. So
Maybe they could help build musical sets, because while you're here, I want to thank you for all the work that you and the crew, I know there are a lot to thank, and the musical was amazing.
That's the second thing I was here for was, yes, I do the musical. I've been doing that for 18 years, but this year in particular, I just wanted to give a shout out to all the parents that were involved this year. Paul Adams being one of those guys. He put, you could probably take a couple of those parents and add up their hours, and they were there just as much as I was.
Right.
And so without all the parent involvement this year, it would not have been the show that it was, and it was a phenomenal show if anybody happened to see that.
Well, thank you for your work.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. Do you collaborate with the Spark group that we have in middle school?
I do every once in a while. All those 7th grade kids are in my classroom, so every once in a while they do some enrichment activities and do some things. And Mr. Brown over at the school, he has access to all of our stuff as well, and so I know he'll probably he might possibly do one of those in his class. But the beauty of our program is we try to do all of those kinds of things, and the kids don't even have to leave our classroom. So yeah. You betcha.
Thank you. I want to also share something that's really great. I see Monica's not here. Really would like to have recognized her in person, but our Lincoln teacher that renews the National Board Certification, Monica Dreiling, for being a National Board certified teacher. She has to demonstrate standards-based evidence and positive impact on students. They also must participate in learning communities that provide evidence of ongoing reflection and continuous learning. It really is not an easy process, and that's why there's, when I say only, but 112,000 board-certified, national board-certified teachers in the U.S., but in comparison to how many teachers there are, it really it's not a large number that go that route to get that certification.
And I think we have about half a dozen,
So,
in the district, 6 or 7.
we end up having, it's nice to end up having Lynette Armstrong here, if you would mind coming forward. Lynette, congratulations to her as far as her work and grant writing skills.
Yeah, pretty novice skills still, but it's an honor to be recognized by the board for the grant that I just recently applied for. It came from the Central Kansas Library Listserv, which is a new organization that we recently joined the last 2 or 3 years. But they used to just service public libraries, and in the last few years, as budgets have been cut, they started reaching out to elementary school or to public libraries. And the grant that I wrote was a grant that was funded in conjunction with the Central Kansas Library System and the Dane G. Hansen Foundation. And I was one of 5 schools in Central Kansas area that was granted $5,000. This year's grant was based on curriculum and new programs. So the grant that I wrote was to support our new reading and writing workshop curriculum. With just 1 year of full implementation under our belt, we really started to see that there were some holes in our library collection, things that we had but weren't at the right levels for the students. And this $5,000 is going to go a long ways to getting the books we need immediately. Without a grant like this, it would take us some time to use just our yearly budget to build up the collection to the point where we really need it to be. And I'm fortunate enough to not only have this grant and the yearly budget, but we always have an annual book fair that we just completed last week, which doubles my money that I spend each year on our library books. But really, when a single book can cost anywhere from $30 up to $40, depending on what you're buying. $2,000 doesn't go as far as a person would like it to go. So getting a $5,000 grant plus my $2,000 yearly budget and a $2,000 book fair set of money really does make a huge difference. We'll be able to get a lot of the books we need in our hands right away. So it was a great opportunity for us.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dan.
Thank
you. Appreciate it.
You bet.
We ended up having 2 Hayes cross-country athletes. They qualified for state. We ended up having, that was in Wamego, Kansas on the 28th. The sophomore Yesenia Maldonado is placed 6th with a time of 21 minutes and 50 seconds, and senior Tana Harriman qualified for state by placing 10th with a time of 22 minutes and 13 seconds. So it's nice to end up having a couple of our students going on in that particular sport. Kiwanis Club, they sponsored fall breakfast for Champions for Students. They sponsored the fall breakfast of Champions for the high school students. Students who earned a 3.0 GPA or better during the first 9 weeks were treated to breakfast, and we ended up having 395 high school students qualified to attend that breakfast. I really thank the Kiwanians, Nate Roletter, Lonnie Claycamp, Marcy Prey, Tammy Norris, Todd Sandoval for being on hand to recognize the exceptional high school students. We ended up having quarterly Hayes West Central Kansas Special Ed Cooperative Golden Apple winners. In that case, we ended up having Melinda McDaniel, Roosevelt Elementary. Lindy is a recipient of that Golden Apple Award. She was nominated by Tasha Lang and the STAR staff. She's been in the district for just over a year, and since that time she's really helped the district grow in understanding what's best for students and staff. She currently is regional trainer for training of trainers, teachers, and administrators in working together and doing what's best for staff. She continues to help families grow by providing visual supports and other resources outside school day. She really helped the STAR program to grow in the district and state, and really getting some recognition at that state level and national level. So when asked something of her, Lindy just always goes beyond, in trying to end up making that work, foster staff growth, effectiveness, professional development. What's amazing is the other apple also went to Mavis Penalto, who is in the same classroom, the same program there at Roosevelt. In her particular case, she's described as a great advocate for the students. And just as the STAR program, if you remember, we had a little bit of information on that, is working with students who have some of the greater learning challenges that in the district. And we end up having, she is in her 9th year, Mavis is. In those 9 years, she's advocated for students who cross her path. This past year, she celebrated her 75th birthday. It's just a number because they're saying that she can outwork all the others in the room. Last year, one of the paras had a picture of Mavis, another student, in our sensory tent, which is not big, reading stories to help calm them down. She also found pulling students on scooters, pushing them on swings, and a lot of other physical work to help with their sensory needs. While being Mavis supervisor, she's never complained about her job. She comes in smiling, knowing she's going to give it her all. Each student has their own connection with her, and you can see how much she cares for all the students. So it was really great seeing Mavis getting recognized as well. Grant recipients, we kind of talked a little bit about that already, but there's a few others I wish to identify. The Midwest Energy Awarding Grant, it's wonderful what we're able to do with that. Jenny Prine at Lincoln Elementary, first grade teacher, received $300. Tessa Brandenburg at Lincoln Elementary, interrelated resource teacher, received $487 to get low-level, high-interest books and storage crates for a special ed classroom. Gay Flax at Lincoln Elementary ended up, she's physical education teacher, and she got $1,000 to purchase golf equipment for PE classes. And Brad, who was here and spoke on that at the middle school, he ended up receiving the $771. See, he didn't get 800, it was 771, so a little short of that, but for the robotic kits there at the middle school. So feel very fortunate to have that Midwest provide that kind of money for education here in Hayes. We ended up having Fire Department Great Escape Poster Challenge winners. They recognized the elementary student poster winners, Fire Station. This was in late October. The winners were treated to a chicken dinner prepared by the local firefighters. Winners were chosen based on their neatness, creativity, poster content, and utilization of color. They ended up having Tyson Younger, Dakota Mayer, Logan Liker from Roosevelt Elementary, Yoselin Tanako Hernandez, and Anna Oliveros from Lincoln Elementary. And then we had Blake Larson, Spencer Munch, and Nicholas Blair from Wilson Elementary. So I guess winner, winner, chicken dinner is what they were going with there. Hayes High School FFA participants in dairy cattle judging. They participated at Bird City dairy cattle judging competition. 6 students competed and placed individually on the senior team. Ashlyn Luters placed 4th. 16 members of the FFA team competed in the green hand competition. Cody Walters placed 2nd. Jevin Newman placed 9th. Taylor, I don't know that one. Lafreddy placed 10th, and congratulations to all of them who participated in the competition. Our FFA students just continually do extremely well. The DECA program supports the Ronald McDonald House Charities. We ended up having the DECA Club raised $1,000 from coupon book sales in October that benefits the Ronald McDonald House Charities. Juniors Isabel Braun, Brianna Fornish, and Callie Liker chaired the fundraiser. This is the 18th year that the DECA program has fundraised for the Ronald McDonald House Charities. DECA will also host a Day of Giving in December that will help benefit the Ronald McDonald House Charities in Wichita, Kansas. I did not have it in here, but wanted to make sure that the Veterans Program, Roosevelt Elementary has done this for several years. They did it again, but they had a program for veterans that was very well received and tremendous turnout. They did a wonderful job this late last week for that particular program, and want to end up giving them attention for that as well.
Okay. Any questions for John on school spotlights? Moving on to the next item, which is the report of the superintendent.
They had a legislative luncheon for the area superintendents and board members there in Salina this last week. It was 11 legislators showed up. There was 13 that had signed that they were going to come, and 11 did show up, which is larger than usual. I'd say usual it's more like half. So it was a very interesting conversation. When you end up having a room full of representatives of school districts and that many legislators to talk on school issues. The main one, of course, had to do with decisions recently made, judicial system linked to finances, and of course they identified that they feel that they're going in the right way, that there's some more money that needs to be tended to. $600 million may be hard to arrange, for this next year, especially when you end up having not just schools that's in need. I'd say they did bring up DCF meeting. They talked about mental health and is need of monies. Highways in the state, of course, they identified that, of money being pulled from that programming. So it clearly throughout the state, it's have to have that open mind that it's not just public schools that's in need at this point and what's happened in the last 5 years with the with monies for the state. So it was still a very productive conversation, and actually it was probably the best one in the last 10 years that I've gone to. So it was, but again, there's some definitely changes that's been in just the last year too. So the other is I did want to also say, for those that were able to go to the play, it was really quite spectacular. They did a wonderful job. I want to make sure that it's clear on one point though. The clarity of that production is one in which it in the background took so much more than what other plays do take. You know, to end up building a set in one location, move it to another, because of the programming at Fort Hays State University, I have to pull it down and then put it back up. There was more work that went into this, so much more than what other musicals in the past had been done. And I say that because for individuals to say, that's where it needs to be all the time. Well, yeah, I mean, that kind of facility, yes, but the programming and the ability to do that, I just want to make sure that there's a catch there for everybody to think on, that it's unlikely, because it was it hasn't been done before. This was the first time. It was very fortunate that scheduling worked that way, and again, I just don't. There was a lot of extra work trying to get that in place.
I'll speak from the parent perspective. There were a lot of nights that went till 1, I think 2 in the mornings latest went, to try to do things, because we only could get in at certain times, we could only construct at certain times, and it was a lot of production. But the students and the quality of the performance merited the effort. But you know, I've managed to say I could be the load master for a semi-truck twice, so it's kind of a nice deal there. But certainly worth the effort. But it's the complications of having to set up a set that needs to be there is great. And over 1,700 in attendance, that actually sets a new record, even with one fewer nights than we would have done here. But it'd been nice to build it and come up to it and do it. But it was I didn't know you could move so much wood, so much paint after a while. And the parents that echo that, as though we had Johnny Matlock and then Jenny Rajiski, and then the team that put it all together. Is that it was amazing last night, starting at about 6, by 10:30 we disassembled and were loading, but a lot of flying screws and screwdrivers there to get it all taken apart. But the parents, there was a lot of parent help and involvement. So if anybody says Hayes parents aren't, the high school parents aren't involved, I'd say that's not true at all. Not with what I saw as part of that, as being one of those parent volunteers.
Very good.
Very good. That's it. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, to include the board meeting minutes for October 23rd, 2017, the special board meeting minutes for October 30th, 2017, approval of the bills in the amount of $2,507,603.82, personnel transactions, and financial reports, to include the petty cash report.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Been moved by Board Member Fox.
Second.
Seconded by Board Member O'Borney. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Moving on to new business. First item on the agenda is the Technology Committee update. I think Scott is here to share some information.
We got a technology guy here if you need it.
Probably one of those videos that comes
out. Sure, John. We believe that.
Good timing. Nice of the technology.
It was a great lead
people
to
could
technology. That's good.
Well, thank you for the opportunity tonight to come and speak to you. Wanted to give you an update before we stand. A few things the committee's been running through. I guess we'll start out. The first thing goes to your board goal, in establishing a replacement tech cycle. Obviously, the biggest chunk of our replacement is the one-to-one program. And how do we break that out? Obviously, I went back here to the 15-16 school year, started there. When we came in and did one-to-one, not only were we refreshing the high school's program at that point, but we were also adding in K through 8. So everything year one, so it's hard to break out of that cycle and get to a point where you're just biting off a small chunk of it each year instead of waiting for one large purchase at the end. So what I'd gone through and looked at was if we broke it out into 4 groups, high school, middle school, and then split the primary schools, K1 and 2, and 3, 4, and 5. That would give you a pretty equal bites out of everything. The number of devices, what I did there to try to figure out where we were going was to take this year's enrollment and forecast that out. So to see that the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade this year, when they get to high school, if those enrollments were to stay constant, what we could, realistically expect. The additional devices, I didn't want to just say, here's year one. The additional devices figure in if there is an increase in enrollment from, say, the 18-19 school year with Hayes High to the 19-20 school year. That enrollment increase at Hayes High would obviously need additional devices. So trying to keep in mind that there is going to be growth from year to year, and it's not necessarily your enrollment year one, may not cover you all 4 years of it. The student devices were put on a 4-year rotation, staff devices on a 5-year. The selection of what devices went first in that refresh, basically we're looking at wear and tear of the device. Your secondary school, your middle school, your high school, the wear and tear on those devices are obviously going to be higher since they are traveling to and from school than your K1, 2 devices that stay in that classroom. So what I'm looking at cost-wise down here, new cost, but then what may still be available if there is any resale value of that equipment when you hit that 4-year mark. 6-year-old iPads right now we're still selling for $60 to $80 a piece. So even 6-year-old equipment does still have some value in it, even if that is them stripping the components out of it and getting what they can. So that was looking at our student side of it. Staff side, we've already kind of are in that cycle of biting off a small chunk at a time. We started with Hayes High in 15-16 school year. District staff we caught last year, and then obviously K-8 staff this year. There's a 2-year break in there with the 5-year cycle, so coming back in at the 2021 school year. Cost-wise on that, that's 3 years down the road. That's hard venturing to guess what technology is going to be in 3 years as far as what we're going to be using, cost or anything like that. The student devices, I went off of what a new device would cost this year. That cost goes down year to year, so we had in some of that. But this document, just like the one last year, I want it to be very fluid. So looking at the next year, looking at costs this year going into next year, and it could very well change enrollment too, continuing to look at those numbers as well. I know that's a lot up there. Is there any questions on that?
If we agree not to hold you to this too much, can I have it in digital format just to come back and look at
Yes.
it later?
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing I was gonna, I'm thinking I'm looking to see like students and staff separate, and I'm looking at the amounts, and I like the way you kind of plan ahead and try and keep whatever. Do you see any concern and I know we're talking 4 or 5 years out, but in 22, 23, where we have all that Hayes High School again, and I'm looking at these numbers here for 18, 19, and then I'm thinking of the numbers we just spent on the K through 8 staff. You had those together, and I'm going, that's going to be big. Do you have any concerns with that, or?
I do. And I mean, the potential does exist. I put 5 years out there. You could go 6 years on it, so that could push that cost to then match in with the middle school again. So thereby lowering that total number of devices you may purchase in 1 year. And I think
and I just want to share too that you're catching actually what others may catch too, because we had the one meeting and I was able to attend that. There is another meeting set up actually in just in November. So this month there's
still working on the schedule.
Okay, but this was talked about, but it hadn't been put together, and this is going to be shared. You're seeing it actually before the committee. So the committee is going to look at it. They're going to meet again. They're going to be so they're trying to work at this at the same time of trying to catch different items, just like you're catching there. The one thing that was exciting in the conversation with the committee the last time was recognizing, and our comparison was like the transportation of having the bus and vehicles, that to end up having a set amount every year and try to work from that instead of like that first year 15, 16, over $1 million being spent, to have something that's more like $200,000 to $300,000 is what would be spent on an annual basis to try to keep this program going. So that's, but I shouldn't say we're at the front. The committee is well aware of it, very good discussion on that, and but again, they need to still work on that before there's the final draft, to be presented at this point.
And with that, as far as working to a replacement device does figure a lot into, that really lets you hone in on what that cost will be. It's just ballparking amount. So that'll be kind of exciting to see that all come together. Is there any other questions, I guess, on this piece right now?
I've got a question. Why, and maybe this is a board decision, but why would you break it out into 4 separate plans or multiples? With the bus, one of the problems is the money, and maybe you can get a discount if you buy 4 buses at once, but technology used to be done this way, and the board changed to doing it all at one time because of the volume buying. If you buy more iPads at one time, you get them cheaper than if you buy 100 now and 100 next year.
It was probably more from the, even what I had caught in talking to the board at an earlier point of being able to budget it, and budget in a way that on an annual basis you kind of have a knowledge of what you're working from. And the management part of introducing equipment and being as efficient as you can on an annual basis of having this many instead of the chaotic number that exists in trying to replace everything in 1 year. So that's where it came from. That was kind of what was talked on earlier.
And at least with iPads, that device in particular, they sell them in packs of 10, so that you only get a break on a pack of 10. So the cost there would be, I guess, if there was a difference in just the overall cost of the device from year 1 to year 2. But the discount in that device is just when you buy it in sets of 10.
When the iPads were presented initially, I see you're looking at a 4-year replacement on those?
Yeah, talking with a few of our vendors, they said technology, with education, that changing, they suggested 3 years. I listed 4, but there again, it does have potential to go to 5.
How much can you get for a 4-year-old iPad? You said
Like
6-year-old was 80.
6-year-olds are, still fetching, $60, $80 range. So, for instance, 4-year-old ones, looking at $100 on those is what I factored in.
When the last big purchase was presented, it was, my recollection, it was 6 years is how long those devices would last, even the ones that went home.
And so,
For the iPads?
yeah, so 4 years there, I guess really what this is doing is just getting us in that 1-year cycle. As far as having that 22, 23 year out there, that can extend on.
But I'm saying the ones that were purchased that are existing now were said that they were going to last for 6 years. And if you're going to replace them in 4, now that's 2/3 of the life that they were originally going to be purchased for.
So we'd be taking K1 and 2 out that full 6 years. If you wanted to take all 2,100 iPads out that 6 years, then you're starting everything over year 1, and you're basically the bulk purchase again.
So you're saying you're just, okay, so you're saying you're
It's
just
just
a portion of it?
it's just starting.
You're trying to split it?
That rotation. Once the rotation starts again, put 4 years on there, but it could go 6. So it could extend out.
How many are, oh, okay, let's see.
It's kind of what we're going to pay for one or the other. It's just a matter of when and how.
But if you roll out machines that are 3 years old, and if you start replacing them at that, in that window, you're going to be cycling them out sooner than 4 years, won't you?
Looking at this, 15, 16, as soon as we start getting rid of iPads, 19, 20, I guess you could say 4.5. I guess it depends,
There'd be
when and how. Are you talking the beginning of the year, end of the year?
Yeah, it'd be over the summer. So there'd be, before you touch the iPads, there'd be 4 full years on those middle school devices.
Well, that needs to be talked on with you need to jot that down and talk on it with the committee then as well.
Well, and I guess the question is, how are you deciding what, these were questions that were all brought up before, but I'm just curious how you're deciding the piece of equipment. Has that already been decided again, or is that?
Yeah. The replacement device, at least with the iPads, I figured in what a replacement iPad costs today. If that were to be the device picked, but
and are you looking at those for the high school as well?
The high school, we've got a couple potential options there. We have the Surface now. We've got an HP 2-in-1 laptop that we're looking at. There's 60 of those that are out with an emerging tech class there and gaining feedback there. Apple did come out today to talk, and we did have a meeting with the administration and a couple of the teachers there. And it's really just to lay all the cards out there, what potentially is out there. But as far as the device, that hasn't been settled on.
How many years have they had the Surface tablets now out there?
This is year 3. And the Surface tablets, that kind of comes back around to this summer. The warranty expires on the Surface. We were able to extend that out 2 years from the original 1 year. The warranty is up on them this summer, and just the issues that we've had with that device, I think it was in the first 2 years that we've had them, we've exchanged 640 of them with Microsoft. That would be 125. 419 of those were manufacturer defects, as far as the screen turned yellow inside of them.
I remember that.
419 of them. Over 2 years. So we're averaging just over 200 a summer that we're sending back for that defect.
Have most of them been replaced now as far as for that defect? Or you're saying it's reoccurring?
It just keeps building each year. We just keep getting, at least year 1 we sent 200 in, but in year 2 we got another 200 through the course of the year.
Those 200 though that were replaced, are we continuing to have problems with those as far as the screens yellowing and stuff again?
I don't know on that.
I'm just curious if it was the same thing you were sending them in for.
Yeah, they do track them in and out there. We haven't, as far as what we get back in replacement devices, we have had to send some of those back to Microsoft. But sometimes that just may be a dead unit out of the box, and it's a variety of issues when they come back to us. I can say at least a good note from the high school, cracked screens out there. It's only 22 and 25, so taking really good care of the device as far as the handling of it, things like that. But it just comes down to the device quality and those manufacturer defects, broken ports, things like that. That just hasn't been the greatest of devices.
I think the replacement schedule here is great, but I might be putting the cart before the horse a little bit. It's going to tie into the next item, the digital learning plan update. But then I think at this timing, the board's going to have to decide what we want to move forward with into the future. So back to the original purchase of the one-to-one district-wide, we put a digital learning plan in place. I mean, so my vote to go forward with it was based on let's do it well and let's see what the outcome is. Now we're going to come back and we're going to have to measure what the results are. And I don't know that one-to-one across the board is what's going to be in the best interest, as we just faced a second bond failure. A community that definitely sees deficiencies with how capital outlay money has been used in the past. I think there's still some carryover into the past to the current. And I would say that the board that I've served on for the last 4+ years has tried to tackle many capital outlay issues. But nonetheless, I think this replacement schedule for right now is probably fine and adequate. I think there's going to be bigger decisions to cross that will tie back in and possibly have to restructure any replacement schedule that's being presented at this time. So I appreciate your effort on this. I do. You and the committee vote.
If there's no more questions on this, I have just a couple other things to cover. Another, I think Board Goal D talks into communication with, or goes into community, but having an updated website. And so we started looking into our websites. They are WordPress sites. They were started, I think it was somewhere around 10 years ago, back when we had a webmaster on site that did all of that. We continue to use them. They look, you go to them, they're dated. Continuity of documents, whether or not one particular site has the most current document over another. Because each building is responsible for their own. So there could be multiple documents, different age, living, different sites. So we looked at how we can replace those sites. What's the best way to do that? And it's not just the agent sites that caused us to look into that. It's also ADA compliance, which is something I didn't really think too much about when you talk school website, but that has been a spot, I guess, with some school districts getting hit by that. As far as, for instance, you have a picture on the website, child going down a slide on the playground. If you hover your mouse over that picture, there's supposed to be a pop-up text that says, child going down slide. Something that describes what's happening in that photo. To make it ADA compliant, there's lots of other parts to that. So when we looked at how we can keep them updated, where we can also maybe save or share costs, looked at a company, and I've been talking to them, Gabbard Communications. I worked with them at my previous school district. They were able to switch out the website we had there. Fantastic company to work for. They want a turnkey solution delivered to the district's support. They don't want the support on the tech department. They're more than happy to take the questions from the different staff that work on the site. They have the ability for teacher pages in there, and they'll take the questions from the teachers. The site also has notification system built into it. So if we do this and replace our current notification system, that offsets that cost as well. So there were some pieces that played into that. We just, even today, I had a conversation with them, so nothing yet there. I mean, kind of targeted for a go-live day to rolling out the websites, February 1st of next year. The other piece that played into it, we have a couple of community members that sit on the tech committee. Their suggestion was that we, I think he phrased it somewhere along the lines of, have us shed that website. And the faster we can shed it, the better. Our current ones, with them being WordPress, if you don't have plugins updated on them, it's just a potential security risk to us and the network. So by moving it to this other company, it gets the hosting off our network, goes in on Amazon's web servers, much more reliable.
What platform were they using? I mean, and the reason I'm curious is, I mean, WordPress is used globally. I mean, it's probably the largest platform that you'll run across.
It's their own custom content management system.
Do you have data on how many hits each of the websites get and what is hit on the websites? Because I'm a mother of 4, and I can tell you I go for the school lunch calendar and the other calendar, and that's it. That's all I use the websites for.
Web traffic across it, I think we might be able to collect it on the district site. We don't have any sort of analytics engine.
I mean, I guess where you'd put a big investment on something, I would be curious about that because, like I said, school lunch calendar and the general school calendar. I have Power School on my phone on an app, and that's all. So.
But you got, I mean, I've been down this road. I probably don't have as much knowledge as Lance, but WordPress, is my understanding, is that, I mean, that's what you make websites out of.
Yeah.
And if we go to a company that's proprietary, are we then locked into them forever? And do we pay more? You know, that's a concern. What's the cost, I guess, is the next question.
First year, I think was in, say, $7,600, somewhere around there. That's offset, though, if we roll that with our notification system. Notification system, we're paying about $5,600 a year for district notifications.
Is that the text or just the
text, email? The reoccurring yearly cost, the first year $7,000, it's prorated. The full year cost, I think, is right at the $11,000 mark.
per year?
Per year. That pulls in, I mean, that is your notification system. That's your school web pages, teacher web pages, if you get to that point. It does give the district a branded app, which I know is the direction that some school districts are moving. Web may not be the tech out there, but everybody got a phone, has the app. You can push notifications straight to that app. I've actually been looking at another district's app and, get their notifications just to see how all that works.
What's the 11,000 due annually? That's, like our website that I have for my office, we pay a set fee a month to make sure you're hitting at the top, but we're not trying to market USD 49, so I don't know what you're paying for to, that's basically just hosting, right?
Yeah, the content management, the notifications, all of that.
They'll redesign it every year if you want?
Yep.
It is going to be like a Facebook page, the way you have user friendly. But that's what you're paying for. I mean, a teacher can design the page wherever they want.
But like teachers can all have a Facebook page for free. That's the drawback to that is that, and a lot of them do, right?
All of my kids' teachers post everything on Seesaw.
Seesaw is the other app.
Yeah.
I just understood it as, this is just another option that you were looking into and exploring, not necessarily set on one way or the other right now.
We can do the design. We're not on the hook for anything unless it goes live. So.
When we get to kind of touch, taste, and smell the difference between that type of, is there something for us to look at that?
I had some of them earlier.
It doesn't have to be now.
This is at least one that I was looking at. Probably one even more familiar with Goddard's website. So that was, yeah, and it's between Sox and Gabbard are the two big school website providers in Kansas. My previous district, when we switched to them, I think we were around there, 10th, 15th school, somewhere in there. That was 5 years ago. Now they're closing in on 60 schools. So, they're definitely growing and expanding each year in the state. It does, all of the websites are dynamic, so whether you're viewing them on laptop, tablet, phone, they will automatically resize for that device. Ours right now is not dynamic. There is just some of that, and that kind of spills back into that ADA. Not that we'll get flagged for it, but that potential exists out there that we could be a target that somebody would come after and say, you're not ADA compliant.
What does that add to the cost?
As far as
to be ADA compliant?
Their system forces all of that. So if you add a picture to the website, maybe an alternate text, stuff that our current site is anything I do, that's all included in there.
A theme will basically do that for you. Even WordPress, our current theme, we could put an ADA compliant one on there that can do all of that for us and make it mobile friendly.
It's conditions of.
I guess either way, whether it's this or something else, we definitely need to look at updating it. As far as ADA state considered.
And part of it had to do with consistency. We talked on that earlier, building to building, making sure that it's not dependent upon just the individual at the building level who is understanding and willing to put the time into it. It ends up being something that have a program that has a help. I mean, that's part of the cost is that they don't want, it's not funneling from Scott to any of them. It's actually directly from anybody has their number to get tech service to try to end up helping in developing it and keeping it current.
And we have had some turnover at the elementary as far as that tech position. First company come back in and do the training. Every 2 years they come back in and catch any new staff and redo the training. Really the only other thing would be committee was looking at was just our acceptable use policy for staff. That it was just simple changes. All it was doing was aligning the acceptable use policy with board policy and making sure that there is what's covered in board policy is also covered in acceptable use policy.
The last thing that I would have to mention is, again, when it comes to staff equipment, we've talked about trying to build your own device platform, possible financial compensation to offset some things in the district. You and I spoke about this a couple times. So we got a replacement schedule up there. That doesn't mean that you've taken the option out. Okay.
No, and we went out and looked, found 5 schools bigger than us, 5 schools smaller than us, and tried to compile what they're doing for devices, get one-to-one staff, and see what's going on. So far, I've only found one district that's piloting BYOD at a grade level.
But that was student,
Yeah, that was
not
student
staff. We didn't find any that had staff.
How many of those are one-to-one all the way through?
Let's see. So, current one-to-one status, and this is listed right here. It says some grades, most. Considering some. Most of them are some grades.
So
There may not be a full one-to-one, but they're doing it in some grades to some extent.
We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half that have bring your own device policies. I'm guessing the Y is a yes and the N is a no. UNK is unknown.
Yes, they list them as, yes is, or Y is yes. The Y NDA is a not board approved policy. So they're doing BYOD, but there's no board policy governing that. And some of that I pulled off the digital learning surveys that the state does each year. So. But I haven't pulled that option. Anything else?
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
I remember. Thanks, Scott. Next item on the agenda is the digital learning plan update. Okay.
All right. I will go over that. As we have talked about on an annual basis here, the goals, just a reminder, I listed those. I'm going to break those out and just kind of talk about what measures, what things we're looking at for each of those. So we had those 5 goals have been part of our plan. The first 2 really talk about instructional practice, transforming that learning, active engagement through effective use. One of the tools we use with this, and you're seeing this before the Digital Learning Committee, we're going to share this with them. There's a committee that's looking at this. We use the walkthrough data, and last year was an interesting year with the reading and writing workshop at the elementary. Typically, when we look at walkthrough data, the elementary and the secondary is very similar. This past year, with the reading and writing workshop, the data was very different. So I have broken it down by elementary and secondary so you can see that. So the walkthrough data here with Bloom's, 14-15 is really kind of that baseline year before we had the one-to-one. And then we look at 15-16 and then the past year, 16, 17. The elementary and the secondary, a lot of the walkthroughs at the elementary were done when the kids were reading in workshop or writing with hands-on books, so you might see less of the technology being used. But again, that's a fair assessment of what the data probably is showing us. But you can look at receiving knowledge, applying, and then analyzing, evaluating, creating is where we want to be, and we want to see that going up. Knowledge, less of kids just receiving knowledge, and then more applying, analyzing, and creating. So you could see how that looks. We have talked at the elementary level with the admin about when they're reading and writing, we feel like they probably are doing more than applying. So we'll probably revise the walkthrough tool to make it fit those instructional methods, because they're applying and evaluating, they're analyzing with the reading, but it's hard to really mark it higher unless you sit with the kid and ask them what they're doing while they're reading. So that's kind of where you see the highest level at the elementary, but you can see at the secondary level, the analyzing, evaluating, and the creating at the middle school and high school, those continue to go up or not observed. So the engagement piece, you can see where we're at there. An interesting note on that, I asked the principals last week when we talked about this as to looking at the data. One of the comments they made with maybe a little decrease at that 90 to 100% is increase in class size. The bigger the class is, the really harder it is they find sometimes to keep everyone engaged. The other thing we talked about at the admin level when we looked at the data a year ago is how many of our kids are just compliant, and are we saying it's engaged, or are they truly engaged? So we're trying to take a little closer look at when we do a walkthrough, if students are being compliant and just doing what they're supposed to do, or are they actively engaged? So you can see where we are with student engagement there, still high numbers.
Shannon, I guess just a quick question on that
Yes.
previous slide. Am I reading that? So
Anytime.
has student engagement actually gone down then?
It has, well, in the 90 to 100% style range it has, and then an increase in this level. So yes, that overall has gone down. Showing through the walkthrough tools.
Okay.
And then the instructional materials, a lot less of the worksheet, which is good. We know anything that's more relevant and hands-on. So these are the two things we've been looking at for the past couple of years. Again, less at the elementary. They're in books or they're writing on paper. But again, less worksheets there too, which was encouraging from an instructional standpoint.
Question here. I look at the walkthrough data and saying that the engagement's been going down, and yet but then I'm looking at this one and I'm seeing that we're making use of more web-based materials. It seems to be incongruous between the two.
That's right. It's hard to know. I mean, we're talking about just effective with technology, but there's so many other factors in when we look at that. Again, I feel like some of this going down is principals really having a better idea of if students are being just compliant or if they're truly engaged. And I'm wondering if we were pretty inflated for the first couple of years.
Okay.
This is probably more of an accurate, but we have to get kids engaged, even if they have been compliant. We want them to move in the upward direction.
Yeah, because it seemed like the web-based tools are being used more. The software, I would expect to see more engagement, and I'm not.
Okay.
But is this a case where you need to revalidate your walkthrough tool?
Well, we haven't revised that, and especially again with the reading and writing workshop. The other part of, students engaged, you're seeing, especially at that secondary level, more of the higher level thinking, which is a good thing.
But then that, again.
Yeah, it's just that engagement piece. So trying to really figure that out and look at that and being consistent is something we've talked about.
Yeah, because you got one piece that doesn't seem to match the other two, so.
Right.
Curious about that.
And then not applicable, again, when they're reading in a book and they're writing on paper. We talked about how technology is not about usage. That would be not, I think, the best way to just to have it in the hands of kids isn't going to make it effective.
On that last slide,
are
those percentages?
Yes, but those aren't the only two options. There's like textbook, there's some other options. We have just been looking at those two, but they are percentages.
You're saying just between the worksheets and the software
right.
based? Okay.
And that's what we have been looking at the last couple of years.
Okay.
And then this is the, we take a look at one more, and again, it's a 5-minute snapshot. So depending on what's happening in those 5 minutes and the classes you're going in, we do ask principals to try to vary the morning, afternoon, but you can see where we're at with those this past year and then the prior years. I mean, I definitely can make sense of where we are with the elementary because of the reading and writing workshop, like I had mentioned to you. The student engagement, that's just kind of an odd one. Questions about those, the information we've been...
That last one, the tech used versus tech used to enhance, what's the difference between that?
Well, a lot of times it's used to just substitute. Like a lot of times instead of maybe writing on a piece of paper, they're using their pen and writing on the iPad, but if they don't feel like it's really enhancing and adding to the lesson. That's what we have been trained and talk about when we do our walkthroughs. Or like, sometimes we look at teachers. If the teacher's just using it to be a glorified overhead, that's not really enhancing that they're using it. So just wanting to take a look at that.
Another question here. On the walkthrough instrument, it's a 5-minute walkthrough. At what frequency is that done within the class, individual teacher classroom?
Well, our goal is to try to get through every classroom once a month, every teacher, but it's harder for our... I'd have to pull those reports to see that. That's our goal, to have the principals get into the teachers once a month. It's probably once every 6 weeks that they try to rotate through them.
Okay.
Is there a natural change in student dynamic when the principal comes into the classroom?
I'd have to ask them that, but I go out into the buildings. I don't know if John gets in the classrooms. Kids are just so attuned to adults coming in and out that I don't even ever really feel like even me walking in, things change.
I see what you're saying. If it was, but they're not to be there longer than 5 minutes. So with the short time, I don't know if that would become as big of an issue of it changing the behavior or what they're planning at that particular time. If you're saying they walk in and immediately every time they walk in, a teacher says, get your iPad. That would sure.
Well, and maybe there's always been a natural straightening. I guess that might be there. When the principal comes in, I mean, you can see it usually with the teacher in the classroom, which trickles down to the students.
Right.
So it just seems like there's some subjectiveness here that would be very difficult to ever accurately measure. Right. So then I'm wondering, with the teachers there on a day in, day out basis, what do their thoughts echo what the walkthrough is showing? Do they have a difference of opinion? Because they would be the ones that actually evaluate it day in, day out.
Right. We'd have to do a survey. That's a good point.
That's true.
I'm not sure. And the walkthrough doesn't just look at these technology things. It looks at so many other things like behavior, transitions, para support. But then
the behavior piece would recognize if there is an offset for a straightening. I just think there's...
We probably need to have that discussion. We've done the walkthrough for a number of years. I think I've not heard principals say they don't feel like it's authentic and it's still a good snapshot. And sometimes you sense that if they're changing and it doesn't seem natural and all of a sudden I walked in. But that's something we can definitely talk about.
Because I brought this up before. I don't agree with our only teacher evaluations being momentary snapshots either. I think students should be evaluating the teachers. I just think there's more data that could probably be garnered in this situation along with some others. I'm not arguing with the data at all. I don't mean it that way. We're looking for ways to improve our process. And I think as much subjectiveness as we can eliminate, the more reliable the data would become. I think that would be true of anything.
Right.
Well, it isn't one of the, I think what you're trying to measure, at least when I was talking about this a couple of years ago, was what is the value of the technology? What does it bring? Or is it just another, is it actually a tool or is it a toy? Is kind of the way I look at it. And so the only way, this is subjective. I think if you had a teacher say how they use it would be subjective as well. If you actually had a test that you said, we're going to test if the students know how to use this technology, and we'll test them day one, and we'll test them on the last day. That's going to be at least an objective measuring stick of, did we improve anything with the students. But then also, some of those that we looked at back then were, that you would set a goal that we're going to increase these test scores by 5 points or 5% or 20%, knowing that maybe in year one you would fail, but you would then revise after year one and continue monitoring. But I don't know that, at least this is a measuring stick, but I don't know if it's one that it makes it difficult to use that to justify the expense that's involved in technology.
Well, and that comes to, and I don't mean to interrupt
No,
Shannon's
that's fine.
presentation here, but that comes to the bigger piece, is we are spending X amount of dollars to put a device in every student's hands. Now, the children are not devoid technology in their lives. I think we can look around and we all see that they're using it. So it's not that they're going to, whether or not they have them in school or not, they're not going to fall behind the commonplace. So the question there is, for what we spend annually, what are we getting, what are the benefits we're reaping on the educational piece? Which means that if they're being used to enhance the education process, truly enhance it, you should see your test scores go up. If they stay flatline or you don't notice a break in the path of where we're going, then it's hard to justify spending X amount of dollars, because you can still bring the technology into the classroom, just in different modes, and maybe you can't use it every day for every student, but you can still have things there, you can adapt to it, and you can move forward. So that's a bigger question that underlies the entire, kind of like I brought up in the previous, in Scott's presentation. There's other things to evaluate here before we look at a replacement schedule. There's other things to evaluate before we accurately determine where we are. But at the end of the day, it's got to come down to some sort of result-based scenario to justify the expense. Because again, with a $75 million bond that just failed, I'm not a rocket scientist here, but I would gather to think that if another one is going to be presented and be passed, it's going to be for a lesser dollar amount, which means there's more capital outlay things that our school district has to take care of themselves. So this money is going to become very critical. Then we start talking about, well, the state funding issue. Are we really deficient right now? If people tighten up, improve their efficiencies, look how we're doing right now. But then you're taking all this money and you're putting it into something else, but then you hear school districts say we don't have enough money. Well, that's kind of an odd situation for the community, the taxpayers to be in. So, back to you. I'm done.
Good discussion, I'm
The
okay.
only thing I would add to that is, we're hearing a lot about measurement and test scores and everything else. I think one of the things that really hit me here is the enhancement. I don't know. Some of that, bringing in technology to me doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to get a better student or a better score or anything else. I think you could argue that you could make it without technology. We have done that for years and years. That doesn't mean we shouldn't, and does adding technology enhance that? Looking at a picture or watching a video, or seeing it happen, or getting to do it myself, or even like the robots. Is that they can see a video or something about it, but in this example, they get the hands-on and actually touch it. And I don't know. That goes back to that age-old thing. Does testing and everything, is that really a great measure either? And I don't know what the answer is.
That's
you
kind of black and white.
do we have a...
I don't think anybody here is saying that you're removing it completely 100% and not allowing anybody to touch it. Now, some of the most up-to-date studies would tell you from the college base that textbooks, is still overall the #1 learning tool for students. There's been 2 that came out in the last year and a half that would reinforce that. The question is, if you're going to put it in every kid's hand every day, and you're going to spend that kind of money, then I'm not saying that it's going to take a person that would normally score a 16 on their ACT and it makes them a 27 by the time they get to be a senior. That's not what I'm saying. Is, can you rationally justify, without the empirical results, that putting it in every child's hand every day for that expense of the district makes the most sense? I'm not saying my answer is yes, no, or indifferent right now. I'm just saying we have to have something to justify that type of inflated expense.
And we've done it for 12 years.
And just like you saw on the list that Scott presented, I don't want to get caught up in what most people are doing or what most people aren't doing, but most people aren't doing this. I don't think anybody has as good a plan as what we have right now. I think we still have holes and ways to improve it, but it's how do you balance maximizing the technology input and getting the educational output? I mean, how do you balance that? Because somebody has to spend money to do it, and how much money should be spent? That's all I was getting at. Not that you should just strip it away all in one fell swoop, just how do we balance it? Just being conscious of that moving forward.
Shannon, while we were talking about the tech used to enhance, is there, what was the reasoning on the 2016-17 elementary? Why does that one seem so much lower on that particular one?
Well, a lot of the walkthroughs were done during the reading and writing workshop, so they aren't using the technology. Or last year, the implementation year now, there's been a lot of teachers who have embraced ways to use technology with their students, and a lot of this past summer's professional development was on how to use technology in the readers and writers workshop. But that is where we're at the elementary. That's why you see that. Because it's not applicable. I won't apologize for having kids reading books and writing. I mean, those are, we
I was
talked
just
about.
curious as far as why that one was.
No, that's why we see those numbers there. As far as then 3 and 4, talk about, Greg talked a little bit about, how are they using those tools by the end of 8th grade, and integrating it into best practices. So for the first time ever, our elementary students, K-5, spend time in computer classes, and for the first time ever, we have a consistent K-5 curriculum that hits on a lot of different areas. You can see the color coding here. Different apps, different digital citizenship we teach through there, different ways they can use it in reading and writing workshop, coding, robotics. So you can see that it's laid out in a scope and sequence. This is K1 that Marie has worked with our computer tech ladies. And again, this scope and sequence then leads up into where our middle schoolers then take it in 6th and 8th grade. But we have 2nd and 3rd grade, typing agent, keyboarding skills, video, creating images. You can see as they get older, the developmental, this is based on ISTE standards, and then the 4th and 5th grade. So I wanted to share that with you because that has been intentional, and we've worked hard to make sure that this is in the labs where kids bring their iPads. We don't have the PC labs. The kids are bringing their iPads to the computer classes, and they have a little docking station.
Are we going through on a lot of this stuff, or I know in the past we've talked a little bit about textbooks and things like that, or have we, I know some have, but how much have we done as far as moving to the digital textbooks and stuff like that now?
The only, the reading and writing workshop, I'm trying to think of the curriculum we've adopted since then. They go math, it's elementary, and since the iPads don't go home, they still have the consumable that they're using. Some of them at the upper grades will put it in the iPads and have the students do it. But with
maybe it's not available. I just
exactly. So, but we haven't really at the secondary, middle school, high school level where they take those iPads home. But I do know that the curriculum and the textbooks that we have had purchased before the one-to-one, we do have kids accessing the online a lot. We make sure that we've gone to a lot of classroom sets of books and then making sure we have the digital access for all kids.
There was a time in which teachers provided their lesson plans to the principal. Does that not occur anymore?
It does.
So why would we have so many times of popping in to do evaluations at kind of inopportune times? Like why do we have so much not observed, or there's the reading writing workshop going on? Because I'm not picking here, but that's 4 or 5 times now that, well, they popped in, but this wasn't able to be measured. Because why would you not pick times if you've got the lesson plan for every teacher? Just help me understand this. Why would you not pick the times in the lesson plan that would cover the most of the things that you were trying to evaluate, rather than picking times in which it's not really there to be evaluated?
Yeah, the walkthrough was intended to be a percent through the day of what that the technology use or the other items, we're speaking of technology right now, would be observed. You don't want to use the lesson plans to identify that and only go in and observe whenever they're actually doing that, because then you'd have 100%, and that's not what you're trying to.
Times in which you know that it's not being used either.
Technology?
You wouldn't intentionally, if you're going to evaluate technology,
But
You wouldn't intentionally.
Well, you're not evaluating technology.
Well, that's what you started off with.
You're evaluating the number of time, I mean, the percent use of technology.
And I understand that.
Yeah.
But you did start your sentence by saying if you're going to go and evaluate technology, you don't want to pick a time in which, so I understand that, but why would you want to pick times in which whatever it is that you're choosing to evaluate that day would line up with the lesson plan? Why would you not want to maximize all of your evaluations that you're going to make in that 5-10 minute snapshot?
Well, you're exactly right. If you were wanting to evaluate the enhanced use of technology or how the teacher's actually using it at that time, and you're really trying to get the details of that, yeah, you'd want to do that, and you wouldn't want to just be there for 5 minutes. You want to be there longer than 5 minutes.
the walkthrough tool, Josh, I pulled like 4 pieces. There's probably 12 pieces though. So the intent of when I was at the middle school and I wanted to go do a walkthrough, it really wasn't to see if technology was being used. I mean, we picked those areas that we thought we could probably, that related in the digital learning plan, but they're going to look for so much more like good instruction and feedback. That's the main purpose of that. So they aren't that intentional about making sure it's during technology use or enhanced time. But, you know, that might be a separate measure that we would want to look at and just do, but that walkthrough data is used for so many other, like what learning styles, what type of Marzano's 9 effective instructional practice. So they're really looking for a lot of those other things. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does. I'm saying if you're going to do evaluations and you're doing X amount of them a year,
Right.
then you would want to match up your evaluation period with whatever you're focusing in on for that time. If you're picking 2 or 3 key items.
But it's not
Okay,
as much as the
it's not
evaluation tool.
evaluation.
It's more of those informal observations. like
That's
when-
why the term is walkthroughs.
Yeah.
Right, but
It's not, yeah,
I understand that, but we have a lot of things that our administrators are tasked with evaluating.
right.
This is one small component of it. So I'm saying when you're doing X amount of walkthroughs annually, you have got X amount of things that you are supposed to be tasked with evaluating. Then you would want to maximize your evaluation time. It's difficult to see that large of a percentage being not observed when you know that that is one of the things that you do want to evaluate at some point in time. Therefore, let's just move on. This is
Yeah,
getting
but,
frustrating.
well, one last comment though on it, Josh. We don't even view it as those walkthroughs as being evaluation. They're a checklist. They're to be very quick. They're there less than 5 minutes. It's not intended to be, as you're saying, evaluation. Evaluation is going to then be observations, which is going to be much longer than 5 minutes. It's going to be 45 minutes that they're sitting in there observing what the teacher's doing, and that is the part where the teacher's actually being evaluated. There really is a separation between the two. The walkthroughs do not become part of a teacher's evaluation process.
Other than the walkthroughs, what other tools are we using to measure the use of them, or the effective use of them?
That would be within the evaluation tool as well, where the teachers are being, where they're actually having at least 3 observations, which are formal observations. They can have informal observations too, where the principal goes in and observes the teacher. They could set it up and have it pre-planned that they're going to come in at this particular time, just like you're saying, having lesson plans of knowing when these different pieces are going
I
to
got to stop
occur.
you there. You just said to Greg that in that 45 minutes, that is one of the things that's being evaluated.
It can be, yes, but
But
not the
not-
walkthroughs.
No, but you
It's-
still, why wouldn't you mesh that information then? Why wouldn't you mesh the information that you get from a longer duration evaluation and go back and update that into your walkthrough?
Well, it would
as
seem
well?
you'd store those in 2 separate areas, but I agree, but I was hoping to say there's 4 or 5 criteria we measure on, and then you would somehow blend all those, kind of like what you were saying, where you have students evaluate and principals evaluate teachers. None of those would be taken in a vacuum. You would take them all as part of the tool to measure.
Well, we don't really tie the walkthrough like into the evaluation, but it's definitely an informal observation. I mean, when you meet with that evaluation, it's not just about that one formal observation. It's everything you've observed when you walk in without your walkthrough tool, or everything you compile. And part of that evaluation rubric that we thought does talk about 21st 21st century learning skills integrating technology. So you do kind of bring it all together, but it's the rubric that we actually use that drive the discussion. But you can't ignore all the other times you've been in that classroom for this or that.
In the description of the purpose or walkthroughs is more of a building level or district level versus teacher improvement process.
Right.
And
For
maybe that's
example,
something we can put as another agenda item too, and discuss this further as well,
Yeah.
to lay it out better for everybody,
Sure.
if that's the case.
I think what we are looking at it is not, we're looking at it as an evaluation or a measurement, and I don't think that's quite what this is doing.
It's not.
I mean, this is a 5-minute walkthrough, whereas we're looking, you know, the board seems to be looking at it more from the perspective of a measurement or something else, and I don't know that, you know, the job description, like 5 minutes isn't really doing that. And I think that's the thing we're looking at. And I guess as I'm looking at it, I'm going, and I'm listening to the conversation, I'm going, okay, what is our goal or focus by this presentation or by listening to this? What information are we supposed to be pulling from it, I guess?
And I
Because
think,
I think maybe we're getting off track.
well, I think you're right, but I think that, and if you're talking about the tool, I think there's always going to be some subjectivity in evaluations or measuring, but the more objective it can be, the easier. And just for me personally, if we have a testing measure that does show that test scores or grades or whatever are going up, it's going to be very difficult for me to vote against it. But if we have nothing and it's just, you know, that, well, we think it's important in those things, and then it makes it very difficult for me as a board member to say, well, we continue spending that money, you know, in light of, you know, the election and those things Josh brought up earlier. I mean, I think that all weighs into it.
I think I'm getting lost in semantics because this presentation is an evaluation of our digital learning plan. But the walkthrough is not an evaluation tool. But yet we're using all that information to evaluate our digital learning plan. So I'm getting lost somewhere in the semantics of everything that's going on.
the walkthrough's an observation, so through the observation, this is what we're seeing. Now, you can use those observations to evaluate whether you think it's working or not as a board, or you're going to continue to support it, I guess. I'm just giving you data based on an observation tool, based on the curriculum offerings, based on different pieces, because there's a lot happening with technology at an instructional level. So, you're right, it's not called a walkthrough evaluation, it's an observation. But through our observations, this is what we're seeing. So then, we use that data to decide its effectiveness. Right? Does that help at all?
Yeah, it does. It does, yeah. Thank you.
So I'm really proud of this K-5 curriculum, but because I really feel like the students have a consistent scope and sequence aligned with the ISTE standards that hopefully in time, again, this is the first year of having it in full implementation, we will see that, so then, you know, they could pass a test on different tools if you so choose. That's what we're going to use to decide on technology purchases in the future. Some other things, 612, Canvas is our learning management system. That continues to be pages viewed and actions taken. You can just see the increase there, so we know that teachers are continuing to use that. More students are, and parents use that for the more of the blended learning model.
What is actions taken?
Actions taken would be like quizzes, things that they actually do in the courses. And then the last one is about professional, the staff development for instructional staff. That was a big piece of the technology. So again, just this last summer, you could see all of these sessions that were just held on technology and how many teachers and hours were put in. We had a lot of sessions on a lot of other things, but this was just through technology. So,
Different question for you. How does our digital plan fit within our responsibility to address the KESA? I know it's coming up later with some training, but it seems with the commissioner's emphasis on work-ready skills, almost over academics, that this 21st century learning does fit. And I did look up as we were sitting here, a meta-analysis over 15 years of research that it does affect test scores. I sent it to every board member for your review. So even though we may talk about this, would we fall short of some of our KESA requirements that are being placed on us by the state?
to have no technology in the district?
We'll always
Or to go
have some
back?
technology, but
Right.
how does this support the KESA objectives? How does a one-to-one support those that we're still in the mode of moving forward on?
Well, a piece of the digital learning plan was about, well, we talked about student engagement, and
Right.
those numbers, we need to talk about what we are observing and be more purposeful in how that, so we want more students engaged. But the differentiation that it can offer through technology would be another thing that would align a lot with the new KISA. So I think the timing is good, because as we dig into the new accreditation and we look at these things, we can decide how important and how fitting it is. But it would definitely make it more challenging to do some of those things without technology as a tool.
Because that's
In
going to be
whatever
incumbent
fashion
on
that
us.
looks like.
Okay. And that's something that's new to this equation that wouldn't have been here when you would have had previous discussion, because the accreditation system has changed substantially.
Right. And that's why it'll be good to look at these videos and everybody has a big picture of what the expectation is.
Yeah.
But we're still accredited the same as every other school in Kansas, right?
We will be.
Or that, I mean, are we
the
different
same
now
model.
than, say, Manhattan?
Actually, the only difference ends up being that the accreditation system itself is different, which then makes every district unique of identifying what are you going to identify to be accredited on. That'll be a piece here that we're going to share in just a little bit. KISA was a big push. Instead of identifying what is your score in math, what is your score in reading or writing at this point, it's a matter of giving each district the ability to study themselves and say, where do you feel that we need to end up improving at? And we end up identifying our own program of saying, this is where we're going to improve. So, yeah, I'd say out of 284 school districts, there's actually 284 different plans that exist because of the way they're doing it.
The plan would be different, but the standard,
the system is the same.
Yeah.
And they've been putting a lot into it of trying to go across the state and doing these trainings that exist for the different districts and trying to share with how the system is supposed to be done. The difficulty is because we've done it a different way, so many districts are really having a hard time of just saying, for some of them, well, just tell us what we need to do. Well, they're not telling us what we need to do. They're saying this is the skeleton of it, and you're supposed to end up identifying what you feel needs most to be done in your district. And it's really difficult for some when basically they're so used to in the past saying, make it very simple, this is the score we need to get on this test, and this is the score we need to get on this test. That is quite a bit different. Because in our case, one of ours may very well not even be a test score. It could be a matter of survey information on the attitude or feelings that exist as far as what the schools are doing for the community. It could be on relationships, and that's how it could be tied, is trying to end up improving relationships within a community, the school community relationship.
We're going to get more training later in the meeting, right?
Yeah, you're going to hear from me really shortly, so unless you have anything else,
No,
I'd be happy to visit with you about.
I just want to move on.
You just want to get to the KISA, huh?
Yeah, well, it drives my life.
Thank you, Shannon.
You bet. Well, thank you.
Any other questions for Shannon on the digital learning plan? Think we got those answered?
Yeah.
Moving on to the next item is the no fund warrant account.
Yeah, Tracy being sick, I think she had sent something to all of you, but the simplicity of this is we no longer can have an account for no fund warrant because it doesn't exist at the end. At the end, though, there was still $22,000 in that account. So what do we need to do with it? We need to move it to another account. And that's how simple this is. It's just a matter of moving it to, in this case, capital outlay. You can't move it to just any account. And capital outlay made the most sense to just move it to that account at this time.
Can I just ask that? So
Sure.
Is this because, did they change the statute on it, or we can't, or we're just not using it anymore?
Just not using it anymore. We ended up having, actually, at the state level can end up saying they have been trying to not encourage that for the last number of years. And so, yeah, that's a nice way to say it.
I guess I'll thank Dean Catt, because I think he started us down this process, but we used to be flagged statewide for being one of the few districts to abuse that. And so I guess to you guys as well for keeping that up. Good job, because that's something that should have been done years and years ago. But
well, it worked. I mean, for that time, it had some purpose, but at this point, we don't have it anymore. And we just need to make sure that the bookkeeping part of it has that money moved to another location.
We need to make a motion to do this?
It's not really, no.
Okay.
And she's not, the way I understood it, she's not quite done tallying everything, so.
Right.
Oh, no, okay.
The exact number.
The exact number for it, right? Okay. Moving on to the next item, which is the administrative and classified handbooks.
And I encourage you to look at them. The reason why I wanted it to stay on there, we're not going to dig into it. It's just a matter, I encourage you to look at it. It's just that we had a meeting last week and had that with the principals, and they too, as we talked on it, felt like this was something, and timing is very good to really dig into it more. So from the time of this meeting to the next one, Tracy definitely wanted to be part of the meeting, but at the same time we wanted to gather more information if there are other details that really maybe more, well, no question, more eyes looking over it very critically is going to be better of trying to get things right and get it approved. I think this happens every year.
Yeah, I think she updated it based on like the negotiations and all those that we say are for all employees, but when we are going to ask administrators and classified staff to sign off. And so when we talked about that with the principals, they're like, you know, we really didn't have a say in what this looks like. And they had some questions when they've read through it as to how it aligns with policy. So we just thought instead of sign it and then find mistakes, we'd rather be precautionary. So that's where we are.
Cool. Very good. Any other questions on that? Moving on to old business, and I think John's already kind of given us an update on the 4 days teacher tuition assistance, so I think we'll kind of wait on that one until the person is back. Next item is the Kansas Education Systems Accreditation update.
Yeah, we talked about, actually KSDE put a series of videos together that our building staff is going through, and we'd like to go through one a month. We probably will finish by the end of the year. But just help you as a board know what the new accreditation and what the vision of Kansas is. And so the vision of Kansas to lead the world in the success of each student. This first video, and there's a web page with them. There's an overview, social emotional kindergarten readiness, individual plans of study, high school graduation, civic engagement. So again, we'll just take a look at one a month, post-secondary completion as well. And then there are some questions we can talk about for discussion. The first one though is just an overview that we feel like it's important for us all to be on the same page. So you need to take a stretch break while it's on.
Thanks for joining us today. We're kicking off a new video series of education videos throughout Kansas describing the board outcomes and the process that we went through to develop those outcomes. It's exciting. We've been all across Kansas over the last 2 years talking about that vision. Kansas leads the world in the success of each student. And now we're in the implementation phase of those board outcomes and those visions. But today I want to tell you where that journey is going to take us and the important aspects of schooling that are going to be so different in Kansas going forward. So let's start with a look back, because I think what's instructive about where we're headed in Kansas, it's innately a Kansas vision that reaches deep in our history and yet transforms us to a new place that we have yet to design. So not too long ago, I was traveling I-70, visiting one of the Ed camps in Kansas designed by teachers. And I got off on I-70 on Highway 99 going into Wamego that early morning. And there I passed one of the great icons in Kansas education, the one-room schoolhouse. And I thought deeply about how education was in Kansas 100 years ago, where we had over tens of thousands of one-room schoolhouses in this state. Literally on every section of land, there was a one-room schoolhouse. One teacher, not multiple, one teacher in one room with grades 1 through 8. Kindergarten hadn't yet been invented. And they handled all those kids. And they saw those kids over 8 years of their schooling. In fact, only a little bit over 20% of Kansans 100 years ago went to high school. So most Kansans stopped their education in 8th grade. We still honor that in every one of our junior highs and middle schools today. We call it 8th grade recognition or graduation, and yet I don't hear any air horns going off or parents yelling. Well, they made it. They know what they're going to do the next year. They're going on to school. But Kansas said, take a look at that one-room schoolhouse, and how do we get back to the parents and the community engaged deeply in the education of our kids? How do we do that again? It's one of the major components of the vision going forward. They also said that teacher was so integral with our families and our kids because they spent every day multiple hours and 8 years with them. How can we do that type of schooling again today? So we're going to look back to the past of that one-room schoolhouse and take the best parts of that, what Kansas said we should come back to. And in this redesign of school going forward and the board outcomes, we're going to be putting those type of things forward. Now, we can't go back to the days of where we just simply learned arithmetic and reading and writing as the 3 R's, and that was all we were going to learn. Today's education and demands on education require much more. And really, that's because of our workforce. Our workforce has become much more sophisticated. You know, it's only been a decade since the iPhone was launched. Just think about that. We have students in school from K to 12 that were in school before the iPhone was developed. Now, would you like to give up your smartphone? Would you like to put it away for 2 weeks?
Yes.
Not be on social media, not take a phone call, not do a text. It seems like it's been with us forever, and that's how fast the world's changing, and that's what education is going to have to do to meet those needs. You know, not too long ago, I was with the CEO as we were part of our tour of a construction company in Lawrence. And he talked about hiring 2 young people to start on his construction crew. And he was going to pay them a really good wage, a wage that would get them to the lower end of middle class. He talked about that they would start on Monday to show up at 8 o'clock for his construction company. Unfortunately, at 8:15, one of them walked through the door, and at 8:34, another one walked through the door. He was very upset with those young men, but told them to get their tools. We need to get on the truck and get out to the work site because business was waiting. He said we got out there, and by 9:30, one of them was on their cell phone texting. And at the end of the day, one of the young men came up and said, I'll quote him, "Hey dude, how did I get promoted in your company?" The young man was, the CEO was so angry with the young man and said, you know, I'm not looking to give you a promotion, I'm looking to fire you. And I'll never forget, he had steely blue eyes, and he looked at me, just like I'm looking at you, and he said, that's the type of young person you're sending me. They're not employable. They don't have that skill set. We have to listen to what business is telling us. I immediately got defensive. You know, this is hard. These kids are coming in greater poverty, they're greater need than we've ever had before, but I sat back and I listened, because I listened to what his demands were and how the kids that he was trying to hire at really good wages, between $15 and $20, weren't meeting those needs. Kansas said that. They said we have to do a better job of teaching skill sets like social, emotional growth. So if you think about how we've organized schools, it's pretty easy. We don't think about it very often because we've been doing it now for many years, and all of us went through those schools, grade schools, middle schools, or junior highs and high schools. They're all organized around age, time, and academic content. Think about it. What do you know about every middle school and every high school in our state? In fact, across the country. What happens at some interval between 44 minutes and 90 minutes every day that school's in session? A phenomenon that we all know about. It's called a bell, and it rings. And when the bell rings, we all know what to do, regardless of where we're at in our learning. We gather our books, we end our engagement, and we go to the next academic subject. It could be choir, it could be math, it could be technology, could be science, but the next content area, there we set for, again, a predetermined amount of time until the next bell rings and we gather our books and go forward. And we do that organized around by that time and by the age of which we are. So all the fifth graders are together. In fact, maybe in high school we start to mix the sophomores and the juniors a little bit, but even there we have things called freshman English. So schools were organized for a different age. And what Kansas are saying today, organize them around principles in the community, around design, around real problems. Problems that the community faces that we can have in short projects that kids can do, engage with the business community, where the business community and the parents come in and work with our students and our teachers on what that design looks like. Yes, we'll have academic content. We'll have it even at a stronger level, but it will be deeply engaged in these projects and these designs about real world thinking. That's what business is asking us to do. That's what the future is asking us to do. At the same time, that the thing that makes education so valuable to most of our kids, that relationship with the teacher, the inspiration of the teacher, happens longer than the 44-minute middle school block, or the 1 year that the teacher gets to spend with them in second grade. Or when I taught in Andover, Kansas, and I taught U.S. history, and I only got to see students for 52 minutes their junior year in high school. I loved it. I wanted the best for them. And I wanted to do everything I could to impact them long after they had left me. I only got to spend 52 minutes, 1 year of their 4-year career. Kansas said we have to change that. So as we embrace those principles of the one-room schoolhouse, it's so important that we look to the future and we listen clearly to what business is saying, what educators are saying, and what the world is saying as we go forward. We don't know what jobs are going to be in the future. We didn't know an iPhone was going to be in our hands 10 years ago. But as I listened to Amazon, the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, talk about the future, and talking about could drones deliver packages to your doorstep. I know now in Kansas, I can set in my basement, order from Amazon, and 2-day delivery, it's at my house. In urban centers in this country, that's happening in 2 hours. What will that do to the retail markets? You know what's happened to the malls. You know what's happened in downtown. What will that start to do with Walmart and all the people that are employed in those jobs? How do we reach deeper for a deeper skill level for our students, that they're adaptable and malleable if we simply have them learning isolated skill sets in 44-minute, 52-minute, or 90-minute blocks? It can't happen. That's where we're headed. And so as you engage in the video series, you're going to learn about the board outcomes. You're going to learn about the redesign of education in Kansas. It's uniquely Kansas. It's uniquely what you said you wanted in your schools, and we're going to go about bringing it to you with parents and the community voice all along the way. It's going to be a great ride as we look back to what we our heritage and how to hold on to that heritage, and we look to the future to make Kansas the best place to educate kids.
A little editing issues, but okay.
So that's our commissioner, and that's kind of the big picture, the vision of where we're headed as a state. So anytime, if any of you go to the KASB conference, when our teachers go out, this is what we're talking about. And as we enter the new accreditation cycle, basically he's talking about the educational institutions deliver the outcomes they're designed to produce. So unless our educational institutions, or we think about rethinking and redesigning schools, we're going to continue to get the same outcomes. And it is a moonshot. It seems like a very lofty goal. Moonshot is kind of the theme that we hear at the state level. And keeping that in mind, there are 7, and I just wanted to share which 7 districts in Kansas are Mercury schools. They filled out an application over the summer and committed to being part of the redesign this year. They are to look at an elementary and a secondary building in their district, and are meeting with state level staff, KSDE, to redesign. And so they're setting the example. They're kind of paving the way. Stockton's not too far, Twin Valley, Liberal out in western Kansas, but you can see their representation there. Then there were more than those 7 applications. So then they decided that they would name the other schools Gemini schools, and they also are taking a look at some different things, and getting some guidance from the state level, and you can take a look at the representation across Kansas. So just again, an overview, the vision for Kansas is that we lead the world in the success of each student. We will be talking, as we look at the accreditation and our measures, what does it mean to be a successful high school graduate? It's not just about the academic preparation. That's why it's not just about a math and a reading test score, but it's about cognitive preparation, the technical skills, employability, and then civic engagement is a big part of it as well. The results are right here. Those are the things that will be a part of our new accreditation action plan, and we will take a closer look at each of those with the video series throughout the rest of this year into the spring. These other R's are part of the needs assessment we'll be doing at a building level in January, taking back to building site councils, district site councils. These are where our goals will be, like when Superintendent Thyssen talked about maybe it's relationships and strengthening relationships. We're going to take a look at how we're doing in these R's, which of these areas do we want to focus on, and the intent being to write good action plans to see an increase and growth in these areas. So they're all interconnected. Below the R's, we have foundational structures, which every school district has to have in place. So again, that's a big picture, and you've seen that before. Some of the things Kansas wants from their schools, these are some of the big ideas of redesign. And even though we're not a Gemini or a Mercury, as we go into this accreditation, we will challenge classrooms, teachers, to look at what they're doing in redesign. It talks about how Kansas children do need quality preschool, including all-day kindergarten, and the state legislature decided to fund that. So they're hearing that. We will give a kindergarten snapshot next year for all kindergartners in the state of Kansas. That information will be used. Changes need to be made to address school culture. We've talked about how we will be looking at adding an elementary counselor. We've known that's a need. That's in line with the direction we're headed with counselors, social workers, collaboration between schools and businesses. Again, reorganizing schools around what's best for students, not the system we've been stuck in with the bell ringing and everybody get up and move. And then the community service needing to play a bigger role. We know that citizenship and having our students feel a sense of community is so important. So these are the things that the commissioner heard from Kansans when he ran around the state. These are some of the key pieces of redesign, making it personalized, making it more project-based, a longer time with teachers, and then an immersion with the parents and the community. So those are some of the things I wanted to share with you just as an overview to get a big picture, and then we will continue to talk about this so that you're all on board with where we are as a state and what's being asked of us.
Yeah, and talking to what I know to the teachers in some of those schools, one school district's put in firefighting as a curriculum. So the kids will, before they graduate high school, become volunteer firefighters, get paid on a job.
On a related note, my employer is paired with several other dairies in southwest Kansas, and we have reached out to universities and community colleges to help us engage high school students at a very early age. We're offering, this year it'll be the first time we're offering in June a week immersion program where they get to come out and be exposed to as much of the dairy industry, allied industry, food processing, and anything that we can get them to touch and feel and be around in 4 full days. We're going to do, and we're going to try and host 15 students and just slam them full of stuff. So
that's awesome.
I mean, and they keep telling community colleges and higher ed that, you know, we need to engage them now, and we need to formulate their career path, you know, beyond that point. So
are those seniors?
We can do juniors and seniors. So.
It's kind of that individual plan to study. If the student feels like that's an interest, then they should go try that.
We have a huge labor force and management force and career path that can be filled, and we can't get it all to sync up. So.
Right.
And I've heard the commissioner speak several times now. But one of the things said career planning starts at kindergarten, which means your immersion idea comes through there. And it is a little different, although we've done things, but we haven't.
Just the exploration of just trying different things,
to get the kids engaged.
So thank you. That's really all I have on that. We will continue to talk about that.
Thanks,
it's exciting.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests. It's like just a reminder on the Kansas Association of School Boards Annual Conference, December 2nd and 3rd. Does anybody have any other discussion or agenda requests?
Have you still doing the DLR?
One second.
Actually, just that one tonight, last Tuesday, and then I guess it would have been Friday, just briefly on the phone. But it was just a matter of saying that in the next couple weeks we'll talk, because it really wasn't a matter of any real conversation at that point, as far as what may go on at this point. So.
Okay. Another thing, just is maybe word-wise or something. As we're looking, as the district is beginning to look at, whatever retirees or replacements next year, I'd behoove the district to do it sooner, because now I'm going to put my hat on. Speaking in my job, I've got places in Texas that are actively seeking my graduates, and I've had school districts contact me that want to get a partnership for a straight flow from Fort Hays to other school districts, and I haven't had those conversations with 49. Now I'm back as a school board member, but.
Right. And we actually are meeting with the elementary principals tomorrow on that topic. So.
Yeah, we asked Aaron to schedule a time with us by the end of this month, and hopefully before the semester break, if we know of any, to get some things advertised, even anticipated openings, so that we can take a look out there.
I would say, now stepping back to my other job, is that a school district again today said, we want to partner with you so we can get your people to go. Right. So I have to do what's right for my students, not necessarily 49.
Right.
But so
the timeliness of it,
contact us soon.
Some of that runs into contracts, and
right. That's what we're talking about.
Notified until a certain time, and we've had years past where some of them said we're going to hold it till after the end of the year, or as late as they could.
But the way that districts get around that, because we're not unique, is that we'll hire you, because we're sure we're going to have an opening somewhere, and if they get the best of the crop, they'll hire them without a defining position.
What happens in the year that you don't have a position?
You know what? The districts will do it because they've got somebody there. The demand is a supply and demand issue. If I've got somebody in my cadre, I can find work for a year if I have to.
I'd like to. We've made some changes. I think every year in negotiations we kind of trying to be more notified a little bit quicker. I think we have a few more.
Encouragement.
Encouragement. There you go. I'm trying to think of a positive word for it.
To notify sooner.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone can argue that the sooner we're notified, the better for everyone.
I think papers start after Jan, so it's kind of hard.
To get retirees back,
By calling them, connect with colleges.
I know. Anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Just wanted you to be aware.
That's part of our conversations, for sure.
There is a personnel issue. Be best to have a conversation with the board for probably 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Do you have a copy?
Okay, I will make a motion to enter into exec session for reasons being of personnel.
Non-elected.
Non-elected
Yeah.
personnel, there we go. To include the board and the board attorney and the superintendent.
And the director of special ed.
And the director of special ed.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Greg, you asked, I'm surprised how many districts.
Yes.
What time?